Alright, hi, my name is Joshua Prisk, and my district is going to be the Glendora Unified School District. So Glendora's mission statement is that their vision for Glendora Unified School District is to provide an exemplary and balanced education program for all students to successfully prepare them to become responsible and continuous learners. That's right on their district website. Okay, so they, along on the same website, they list their brief statements of belief. The number one is that students are the greatest priority. It's a thing they should feel strongly about. Next is that all people have the right to a safe and nurturing and secure environment. Number three, all people deserve a quality education. 4, successful education is the shared responsibility of the parents, students, educators, and community. They see it as a collaborative group effort. 5, challenges that lead to successful experiences build feelings of confidence and self-worth. That one is really interesting to me because that one's basically saying that challenges and struggles and obstacles aren't to be feared. I haven't seen that in any other districts' statements of belief, and so I found that really interesting. Education is a foundation for individual freedom, responsibility, justice, and democracy. Education empowers students to meet the challenges of your ever-changing world. Pretty broad statements. Education good. Education is what you need to be a better person. Well, that makes sense coming from an education institution. So there's no real big surprise in the belief statements. Okay, so if we look at the ethnicity breakdown of Glendora Unified School District, it is not anywhere near as diverse as Los Angeles County or statewide. If we look at the numbers, first of all, 7,444 is the total population, which is very small for a district. It only has 1.2% African Americans, as opposed to the greater county being 7.5. That's a pretty substantial difference. It also has 40% white students, whereas Los Angeles County has 14. So we're seeing a much less diversity than we would in other districts in the county. And you can find this information on the California Department of Education. SAT scores is that Glendora Unified does very well. The Los Angeles County, well, we can look at the numbers here. Grade 12 enrollment is 616, which again is a very small school. So the percentage of meeting ELA benchmarks for the English language learners is 91%. Which is huge. The statewide average is 72, and LA County is 64, which you can see right here. That is a monumental difference. 91% is through the roof. And when we look at the percentage meeting even the math benchmarks, it's at here in the last column, 73% for Glendora High and Glendora Unified. They are the same number here, Glendora High and Glendora Unified, because there is one high school. There is one high school in Glendora Unified School District and one continuation school, which we'll talk about. But we can see here 73.67%. LA County is 41, and statewide is 50. So across the board, we can see that Glendora is doing phenomenal in their testing and their scores. It is a, yeah, okay. All right, graduation rates. So all students accounted for, this is also from the Department of Education, all students accounted for is 542 students at the school, and they have a 98.7 graduation rate. It's down 0.5% from last year, and English language learners, of which there is only 29, have 100%. Those numbers seem too good to be true. When we get into the continuation school, I found the reason why that is. But 100% graduation from English learners right now, according to the California Department of Education, which is up 3%. I've also included their lowest graduating rank, which is students with disabilities. They graduate at 92% and have declined 3.8% this last year. That's the site rated that as a pretty substantial change. A pretty substantial decline is almost 4%. And 92 is their lowest graduating subgroup. Something else that was something to look at is the suspension rate of the school, also from the California Department of Education. All students in total is 2,619, and they have a 1.9% suspension rate for all their students. And that is down almost a whole percent point this year, which is pretty good. Except when you look at their English language learners, and the whole school is 96. They have a 3.1% suspension, and it has gone up 3.1%. So they went from not suspending any English language learners to suspending 3.1. Either that or the school didn't have the data beforehand, which is likely. But 3.1 is still much higher than the average for the school, which really is unacceptable. It means that, for me, that effort is being put less into helping English language learners than it is being put into the rest of the population. Okay, so their LCAP funding, they have a 135-page breakdown of how it's going to be spent in this year. This is a sub-site off of the Glendora Unified School District homepage that has the whole plan that you can look at. Their total general funding expenditure for the year is $75 million, and their principal chief goal is to increase student achievement for all students and each significant subgroup, ELs, Hispanic, SES, special education, and foster youth, to proficient or advanced range by 5% on district-determined achievement data for the school. So out of their $75 million budget, they acknowledge that it is not socially just and there's not a lot of equity between the majority of white student population and the more need-intensive subgroups of EL, Hispanic, and the rest. So they admit that there is a problem there. It is the number one thing. In the discussion, one really interesting thing that I liked in the expenditure was increasing the time the libraries would stay open for students 30 minutes after school. I'm sure this came from a meeting where they said, how can we reach these students? How can we help them, those who are struggling at home life? And so having computers in their household, who don't have a computer in their household, can now use this school library, which I thought was a wonderful idea. We can see here this is from EdSource. This is funding per student, and you can see it's actually slightly under average. The average being around 7,000, and this being slightly just under it from 2014 going onwards. And as you can see, the gap between what's averagely spent and what Glendora is spending is less and less. Which I thought was very interesting, considering they come from a very socially economic area that's doing well. It's an affluent community. So for my interviews, I was having a really difficult time setting up an interview with a person from the school, and there were several problems with that. Part of the problem was the size of the school. It's a very small school with one high school and just a couple middle schools, and it was really hard to get in contact with them. Also, because I sent emails out to staff and to principals and to a couple people, probably about 10 people, and the only responses I got were that they weren't available. Lastly, part of the problem was on my end. I was able to find one community discussion forum that the district was having, but it was a day I was having a wedding. So I wasn't able to do the interview, but my solution then was to I found some staff members' anonymous testimonials on the school district. People speaking about what they liked and what they didn't like and what their issues were and why they worked there, why they left there, that sort of situation. And so here's what I found. Okay, so there's an instructional aide from one of the elementary schools who worked as a yard duty supervisor. And what they said is that working with the students at this school can get wild. They will scream, yell, challenge your rank, but other than that, I'd say it was a pretty good gig. And then she went on to say that a lot of the students are spoiled children from rich homes, and it shows in many of their attitudes towards authority. I hear that a lot about Glendora Unified School District from parents, and I subbed there a couple times, and the students do have a problem. They come from very rich, very not ethnically diverse community. It's a very privileged, entitled group, and they often feel resentful of anybody telling them what to do. Another interview was done with her testimonials came from a lunch lady at La Fetra Elementary School. And what she said was working at elementary school is a lot of work. It made even worse by that you will never get full-time. They cut full-time to 7.5 hours so they don't have to pay benefits, despite saying we are a family. My takeaway from hearing her testimonial is that the school could use some improvement in how they treat staff and other teachers or administration. It seems, and I've heard this from a couple different people on the site, I chose this one because it was eloquently put, but the support staff seems to feel unsupported by the school. The school seems to take care of teachers fine, for the most part, but their janitors, their lunch ladies, their field supervisors, they're sort of treated like second-class citizens in my research. And lastly, these are the words of a biology teacher from Glendora High School. He said the school culture was difficult because the principal was a hypocrite. He would call for the school culture to be growth-minded, but not demonstrate the same. The administration is all talk, no walk. The hardest part of my job every day was trying to figure out what the administrator wanted because they never were straightforward. And I can see where he would be coming from looking at the statements of belief and the mission statement. They're very broad. So I have a feeling they had a lot of broad words like we want diversity, but they didn't want to allocate money to it. Or they want a growth-minded culture, but they didn't want to spend any time achieving that goal. And then he also went on to echo the words of other staff saying the students were spoiled and he had a major problem with authority in the classroom. A lot of disrespect, a lot of challenging his lessons and things like that. When we're looking at the different reasons students act out, it seems it's almost always out of power, from what the testimonials were saying. Always about trying to take authority from the teacher, which probably reflects the home life. And then I also, I was a long-term sub for Glendora's continuation school, known as Whitcomb High School. In other words, I was a district employee myself. So I was subbing for a child development class for 6 weeks while the teacher was on maternity leave, a subject I have no experience in, just for the record. And after my time there and speaking with the kids, I can really tell you 3 things about Glendora Unified School District. One is they keep the high school graduation rate high by sending any student who is not going to pass to Whitcomb Continuation School. And nobody fails at Whitcomb. If you show up, you pass. So I know that the Department of Education shows a 100% graduation rate, but that's because everybody who looks like they're not going to is sent to Whitcomb. And there are 100 million ways to get units there that are super simple. Students can leave one class and go to a computer program, and as long as they're there, they're getting credit for both. It's almost a joke, and that's from the students that I've talked to while at this school, and my experience with the other staff members while I was there. The student population is very spoiled. If they bring a fidget spinner, they will fight you to take it back. I had to call the office several times to send somebody because the student wouldn't give it to me. And so that's commonplace. And lastly, Glendora Unified had the kindest staff that I've ever worked with. I've been a ROP teacher, an ROP substitute, and so ROP covers all the districts from Fontana out to Diamond Bar to Azusa. They're all over, and I've subbed for a lot of these districts. And Glendora Unified and Whitcomb staff were the nicest ones. So that has to be considered in the discussion. Okay, so their strengths. They have very strong academic results. Very strong, in the 90s. At least 20 points ahead of the county average and the state average, which is great. They have very small class size. Glendora Unified is a very small school, a fraction of what the normal school sizes are for the surrounding communities. It comes from a very affluent area. Glendora has a lot of money and a lot of community support. It's a very close-knit community, and their student population reflects that. And then they have friendly and supportive staff for teachers and for subs. I was taken very well care of. I was made sure that someone came and checked on me. So for teachers and subs, they treat them really good. That seems to be the majority of their focus. Their weaknesses, though, is they have a spoiled and entitled student population. They have other support staff feel like second-class citizens. Oops, I should say second class, not second class. These second-class citizen support staff, as anyone who's worked in education can tell you, are the backbone of a school. When you start working at a school, you want to get to know the janitor, you want to get to know the lunch lady, you want to get to know the office administrators. And if they're not happy, I can't imagine everybody else is. It is a lack of ethnically diverse population compared to California, and a higher rate of suspensions for ELLs, which means that they are probably not working with the ELLs. They are suspending them or sending them to Whitcomb, and that's that. So that lack of diverse population probably makes it very difficult for the ELLs, I'd imagine, and so that could be a thing. The other thing is the misleading data by slightly shady practices. By sending everybody to a continuation school where you pass with no effort is a kind of cheap way to keep your graduation rates high and unethical, in my opinion. So my recommendations is, one, to utilize the small class size to personalize more attention for struggling students instead of sending them to continuation school. So what I would like to see is a decrease in Whitcomb student size by 15% at least over the next 3 years. So instead of sending students the second they're in trouble over to Whitcomb, spend the time trying to work with them to keep them in Glendora High School. I would use, number two, I would use parent involvement more in discussions of their children's attitude. I would add like a coffee with the principal style community meeting at least once a month where parents can come in, principals can and teachers can explain their problems they're having with the discipline, and really get maybe the parents that are at home on the side of the teachers, work together to curtail that attitude problem. Number three, I'd increase spending on support staff. I would move 25% of the part-time workers to full-time status. All the workers that are at 7.5 hours, give them that extra half hour, make them 8 hours, and I would allocate 5% of the budget for support staff raises across the board. And that's not a lot, 5%. I mean, it is probably for out of a $75 million budget. But just a little bit to show them they're appreciated would probably go a long way. And then lastly, my fourth suggestion would be to have less ambiguity in the statement of belief and mission statement. And the way I would do that is I would rewrite the mission statements and the belief statements every year. Rewrite them to have obtainable numerical goals. So instead of saying that we want our children to feel safe, you could say something in, we want less than 5% of our population to feel unsafe by the end of the year. Something like that. And then update those goals every year. Rewrite them. It's 6 words on the homepage. It wouldn't be that difficult. So yeah, that's Glendora Unified School District. That is my presentation. My name is Josh Prisk, and thank you for watching. This is my citation page. All the things that were cited have a smaller abbreviated link under, not a link, but where they came from underneath them, and then this is the final page where you can find the actual location of each of these things. Okay, thank you very much.